Hello, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about nonfiction, specifically biographies, autobiographies, and memoirs. Biographies are detailed nonfiction narratives of a person's life written by somebody else. The story must be true and based on factual evidence, and it can be academic works or nonfiction stories about famous people, such as athletes, celebrities, politicians, and much more. A couple of good examples of biographies include Steve Jobs by Walter Isaacson and Elon Musk, Tesla, SpaceX, and the Quest for a Fantastic Future by Ashley Vance. The Steve Jobs example is particularly good because the author has compiled over 40 interviews from various people who knew Steve Jobs in some form or fashion. The biography shows Jobs' innovative edge and inventiveness. Different from biographies, autobiographies are nonfiction narratives of a person's life written by that person. This means the author is writing about his or her own life. These can be written off of memory as opposed to a wide variety of documents and viewpoints used to write a biography. Great examples of autobiographies include Nelson Mandela's Long Walk to Freedom and Night by Elie Wiesel. Night is an autobiographical account of a teenager's survival during the Holocaust. Elie reflects on his experiences, hardships, and perseverance before, during, and after the horrific events. And lastly, we have memoirs. Similar to an autobiography, a memoir is also a writing from an author about his or her own life. It usually covers a specific period of time, a particular story, or other important moments in a person's life, and it's usually less formal and more creative. A couple of good examples of memoirs include I Am Malala by Malala Yousafzai and Marley and Me by John Grogan. I Am Malala particularly is a great multicultural text that can be used in the classroom. The purpose of the memoir is to document the strong will of a Pakistani girl and her fight for education in a place very different and much more hostile than America. All in all, these are some great examples of nonfiction texts. We have biographies, which are a true written account of somebody's life written by somebody else. Autobiographies, which are a true written account of somebody's life written by that person. And memoirs, when a person recalls important events or periods of time in their own life. So now I just wanted to do a read along with you all from an excerpt of Malala the Powerful, which is a biography about Malala. So we'll start at the heading of School Ban. In January 2009, the Taliban ordered all girls' schools to close. That included Malala's school, which her father had owned for more than a decade. It was devastating news. School was one of the most important parts of Malala's life, and a luxury she never took for granted. After all, fewer than half the girls in rural Pakistan had the opportunity to receive any education at all. Despite the Taliban's order, Malala's father decided to keep his school open. This was incredibly dangerous, especially because the Taliban were gaining popularity in Swat. Some residents saw them as a welcome alternative to Pakistan's government and military, which have been plagued by corruption. From then on, Malala and her family lived under constant threat. Across the region, hundreds of schools were being bombed, teachers were being murdered, Malala and her classmates stopped wearing their school uniforms and began hiding their books under their clothing. Staying alive meant going to school had to be top secret. Even with these precautions, many parents felt the risk was too great. Attendance at Malala's schools decreased by more than 60%. But what could Malala do? What could one girl do but watch helplessly as her freedoms were taken away? A powerful weapon. It turns out there was something she could do. Malala possessed a weapon of her own, her voice. Now I want to just stop and think for a second about a literary element that just popped up here, of a metaphor. So Malala's voice is actually a metaphor for a weapon. Now, when we think of weapons, sometimes we think of, knives or guns, something along that sort. So it's not a literal weapon, but it is a figurative weapon, which makes this a metaphor. So let's continue. And she would risk everything to use it. In 2009, she began blogging for the British Broadcasting Company, BBC's, Urdu site about what her life was like under the Taliban. Urdu is the official language of Pakistan. To protect her identity, she used a pseudonym. A pseudonym is a fake or fictitious name for anyone who may be wondering. She wrote about her dream of becoming a doctor one day, her fears of the terrorists, and her fierce determination to get the education she needed, no matter what the Taliban did or how afraid she was. So we want to go ahead and scroll down a little bit here and continue. The blog was an instant hit. Soon, people all over the world were reading it. Malala was helping to focus attention on what was happening in SWAT. Outrage grew, and many in Pakistan and around the world criticized the Pakistani government for allowing the Taliban to become so powerful. If we scroll down here, we can find another literary element. So look at this paragraph here that starts with today. Today, Malala has become a powerful symbol of the struggle so many kids face. So Malala is a symbolism for the struggle that many kids across the world face in getting or even attaining a chance at an education. Some 132 million children and teens around the world do not attend school, often because they must work to help support their families or because they have no school to go to. Malala hopes to change that. She envisions a world in which all children, and especially girls, can get the education they need to become whatever they want, from doctors and scientists to politicians and journalists. In one of her first public statements after the shooting, Malala stated that she felt her role was to serve humanity. So that basically shows us the different type of literary elements that are possible in a nonfiction text, such as a biography, such as this one, a memoir, or an autobiography. And if we look, here's some key questions I want y'all to think about. The first is, what does the author mean when she says Malala has a powerful weapon? So again, be thinking about the metaphor we went over in the read-along. Also, what makes Malala Yousafzai a crusader? So that's kind of a good one to go back and look in the text and see if we could figure that one out as well. So we went over our literary elements of a metaphor, which is a figure of speech in which a word or phrase is applied to an object or action which is not literally applicable. So the example of that we found was Malala's voice is a powerful weapon. Also, we have symbolism, which is the use of symbols to represent ideas or qualities. And in that, we found that Malala is a symbol of the struggle that many kids face in trying to attain an education. The activity that I chose that I thought would go well for students to perform for nonfiction, autobiographies, biographies, or memoirs is that they will select one of their favorite autobiographies, biographies, or memoirs that they remember enjoying, whether it's something they recently read or maybe a long time ago, that just really sticks out to them. Their goal is to determine which category of nonfiction writing their selection falls under based on the characteristics that we went over, and to select one literary element and give us an example of that particular element in their selection. So I think this is a really good activity because it allows students to choose something of their interest while also applying the things we've learned, such as the characteristics of nonfiction texts, as well as the literary elements that may fall under those texts.